Hello and welcome to Insiders, a podcast all about the world of television with me, Peter Fincham.
And me, Jimmy Mulville.
This is a podcast for people who love TV and who want to know a bit more about what goes on behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jim,
Yes.
I say this almost every week, you're back from being away. You've been in America. You went to the WGA Awards.
I did.
Have I got news for you? You were up for a writing. Well, first of all, did you win?
No.
Oh, sorry. I thought
No,
you had.
no.
I was teeing that up in a sort of, we did, in a sort
No.
of almost Trumpian,
No.
we're the winners, we're that
No,
kind of-
but it's not just about the winning.
It's the
It's
seeing
the
other
losing.
people lose.
It's the writers.
Who won out of
So it was the
out of-
Writers Guild Awards and held at the Edison Ballroom in New York.
Yeah.
And we were up in the category against John Oliver last week tonight, SNL US,
Yeah.
and The Daily Show, and Seth Meyers, Late Night with Seth, all fantastic shows. We've got a very small writing team. I mean, they're really good. And our show, of course, is partly written, but also partly improvised. I haven't got news to is partly improvised because people say what they want to say on the night. And we're being preempted. Now, to explain that, CNN, as you know, is a news network. And at the moment, there's a lot of news.
Yep.
So we are now not going out on Saturday nights on linear, but we go out on the streaming service the following day on HBO Max rather, and on the app. The CNN have got this new app which I should advertise.
And do you get an actual kind of linear thing?
No,
They don't put you out at 2 in the morning or
At
something?
the moment, no. They're clearing the schedules, so the linear service is devoted entirely
To news.
commentating on the war.
Which does seem reasonable since
That's
CNN
fine.
is the channel.
Yeah. I mean, I met with Mark Thompson, who, as you know, is the CEO and chief editor of CNN, and he's a Brit, and he was saying that over 100 million people have watched CNN globally over the last week.
Wow.
So everybody obviously has got their eyes on what's happening.
And
in
leaving
Iran.
aside the war,
Yeah.
which still dominates the news, obviously there's big changes taking place in CNN's world because CNN is part of Warner Brothers and therefore has been taken over by Paramount.
About to be,
but Netflix no longer the running, etc., etc. When you were in America, what was the mood about that? What did you pick up?
I think their view is, certainly at the top, is let's see what happens. As you know, David Ellison said quite categorically that we're not, CNN's a great brand, and we want to speak to the centre left, the centre right, the 70% of the American public who have those views. We want to. And
70%,
the thing is
that right?
Well, that's what he said in his interview. He's probably not
I've
right.
got the quote he said. Actually, he said, CNN is an incredible brand with an incredible team, and we absolutely believe in the independence that needs to be maintained, obviously, for those incredible journalists, and we want to support that going forward.
So he's going to cancel it then?
That's three incredibles. Well, it's one of those quotes that has, it says here at the bottom of it, somebody's written this
We're fully
for me.
behind him. And we're going to push him off the ledge.
So I agree. This does feel a bit like the football chairman saying the manager's doing a great job. But it would be very obvious in a way for the Ellisons to say, we're Trump-leaning, CNN's a bit left-leaning, kill it.
Yeah.
But these media moguls, and I know, David Ellison's sort of what you describe as a nepo baby, because actually
I
it's
like
all-
him a lot, by the way, now.
I bet you do.
I like him. He's a fine man.
Did you meet him? Was he there?
No, but I'm heavily. I'm very available.
You've sent him an early Christmas
whenever
card.
he wants to. I'm sending him a Christmas card every week.
But these media moguls, they play a long game, don't they? So, like sort of Rupert Murdoch over the years, he's cozied up to the Prime Minister, whether it's Mrs. Thatcher, whether it's Tony Blair or whatever. But he knows when he sits with a politician, you won't be there forever. And in America, that's even more so. So wouldn't the Ellisons, who presumably expect to own CNNs for many, many years to come, wouldn't they think, hang on a minute?
Yeah, they're going to hedge their bets. I mean, let's not forget that I suppose what CNN are thinking about is what's just happened to CBS. CBS was part of the Paramount universe, if you like. It was their linear channel, a bit like ITV, very popular, very middle of the road, but, pretty much trusted news network. What happens is David Ellison buys a company called The Free Press, which its co-founder, Barry Weiss, is kind of conservative curious, right? So she leans to the right. And
Barry, and she's a woman.
Barry,
It's not B-A-R-R-Y.
No, it's B-A-R-I.
Okay.
Barry, she is a woman. Pronouns, I don't know what her pronouns are.
It's not like Barry White.
No.
Barry Weiss.
It's not Barry White. That would be
Remember Barry White?
I do remember Barry White.
We got it together, babe.
God, it was like he was in the room, Peter. If you closed your eyes at that point, I thought Barry White was here with us. No, not. But Barry White.
I don't even know if Barry White is still with us. I kind of hope he is. Barry White, come on.
Is he?
Yeah.
Is he having tea with Jeremy Isaacs? Barry White would be a much more imaginative and much funnier head of CBS News, but it's Barry Weiss, Weiss, which is German for white.
I've got my head around it.
So Barry Weiss, and she basically, to be honest, I think the technical term is she's pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah.
I was at the WGA Awards, and on Sunday, as you alluded to, and the journalistic awards were given out by a man called Bill Owens. Now, Bill Owens got a standing ovation. I didn't know who Bill Owens was, but when he came out on stage, everybody stood up and applauded him. Apparently, he's left. He was the executive producer of 60 Minutes. He'd been at the programme for over 26 years, ending up as the guy that ran the show, and he's left. He's left because he no longer has editorial independence. And today, another senior journalist has left CBS. So CBS, the news division anyway, is being torn apart by the fact that the Ellisons have, in fact, done what I think Trump wanted, which they've changed the angle of approach for CBS News. So I guess CNN have that as a concern because they've seen it in action.
Doing a satirical comedy show on CNN, is that better than doing the actual political news stuff or worse? I don't know. But, a satirical comedy is almost designed to annoy the powers that be.
Yeah, that's
one thing we know about the Trump regime, and not just Trump, but the people around him, is that then they're not people who, can take a joke at their expense.
No.
They take themselves quite seriously.
They do, and they're very thin-skinned.
Yeah. Just
get back to the awards. Is that I did forget to mention Stephen Colbert was honoured.
And just explain, Stephen Colbert is one of the people who was in Trump's sight.
He was one of the sacrificial lambs. He was sacrificed on the altar of let's get the deal done with Trump. And the excuse was that late night is not making a lot of money. But Colbert was one of the most successful purveyors of late night, hugely popular, and they've got rid of him. He's leaving in May, I think, and he came on stage. He was honoured the Walter Bernstein Award, which was given usually to journalists for acts of bravery in the face of whatever.
Was Walter Bernstein, was he from the McCarthyite area?
Yes, he was banned under McCarthy and had to write under a pseudonym, and his life was, in those days, this Senator McCarthy went to the big studios and said, if you don't get rid of all your communists that are working for you, because in those days it was Reds under the bed, we will fuck you up. And of course, it's exactly what Trump's doing to various companies now, saying, don't do my bidding, I'll get in your way. And so people did. They were blacklisted, and a lot of people came over here. In fact, some writers came over from the US and worked for ATV, I think, in those days. It was,
Associated Television?
In Birmingham.
That's Lou Grade, yeah.
And they wrote Robin Hood. They wrote the old Robin Hood was written by American writers.
Riding Through the Glen, that one.
And they kept putting in kind of lefty bits, and producers would say, you can't put this in, because he robbed.
I'll tell you the story.
He robbed from the rich and gave
when
to
I was
the
about
poor.
4, he did, yeah. When I was about 4 years old, I was invited to a friend's birthday party, as you are when you're 4 years old. Probably
Black tie?
Not exactly. Some boy, who was in my class, whether he was a friend or not, it's not the point. I was invited. But it clashed with Robin Hood, which was on, telly at tea time. And I kicked up such a fuss saying, I want to watch Robin Hood, because here was the problem. The family of the boy whose, the birthday party I'd been invited to, they didn't have a telly.
Oh, I thought you say they're related to the Sheriff of Nottingham.
No, they didn't have a telly. So I turned up and said, can I watch Robin Hood on the telly?
Yeah.
And my parents were so embarrassed at my appalling behaviour that they took me home. And I thought, great, I'm going home now. I can go and watch Robin Hood.
And you sent to bed?
Except I was sent to my room.
And they bought them a telly, did they?
That is such a formative trauma in my early life that many, many years later, when I became the controller of BBC1, one of the first things I did was to commission a series of Robin Hood, knowing I'd be allowed to watch it.
This is news. This is going to.
The Sheriff of Nottingham was Keith Allen.
Do you think that our schedules, the things we watch, are all based on the traumas that people have had in their childhoods.
That one. Some of them weren't, but that particular one was. And I remember going to the press screening and thinking,
what was the one show trauma based on that?
The one show trauma was based on the fact that it's really hard work to commission different shows into the 7 o'clock slot every night of the week. If you scrap a lot of them and create a thing called one show, you can put your feet up.
And you thought about that when you were 4?
Not the one show.
Okay.
No, but it must be one of my earliest memories.
Anyway, Stephen Colbert gets up on
We've
stage.
Drifted, yes.
And he says, I'm out of business in May. I've got a great writing team here. And I didn't do a lot of the jokes that they wrote for me because I didn't think they were appropriate or whatever. But they were really funny. I want to do them now. He did a joke. He said, do you remember when Trump and Melania went to see the Pope? And she was dressed all in black with a long black veil. Well, they say, dress for the job you want.
So let's get closer to home and let's move back to, television, what's going on in television here in the UK. And the BBC have published their response to the government's green paper.
Yes.
This is really important to the future of the BBC. It's all about how it's sustainable in the long term and how it's funded. Although, even as I say that, when I think of a green paper, kind of one eyelid droops, and when I think of the BBC's response, the other eyelid droops. But basically, the BBC, I think this is interesting, that the BBC, obviously they're going to say in the response to the green paper, the BBC needs to survive. The BBC matters. All the well-rehearsed stuff about its importance in national life. Tim Davies quoted as saying, the choice is here is clear.
Yeah.
Back the BBC or watch it decline. The status quo is not an option. I mean, these again are kind of, it says here, kind of, typical quotes. But then the BBC starts leaning into the difficult reality that 94% of people in the UK use BBC services each month, but fewer than 80% of households contribute to the licence fee.
Yes.
And, among the various things we talk about with the licence fee, it seems to me this is one of the thorniest of all, because how do you get licence fee evasion down and the numbers up in terms of people who pay the licence fee? Well, you've got to, you make it illegal, you go knocking on people's doors, very unpopular things to do and things that the BBC traditionally doesn't like, in a sense, to associate itself with, the enforcement of the licence fee. But on the other hand, which is why it's one of those rock and hard place issues, if you don't do something about it, in a world in which we all pay voluntary subscriptions for whatever it is, Netflix, Sky, etc., a license fee, you can well see as the years go by, more and more people think, do I really need to pay?
Well, according to the latest Public Accounts Committee estimate, which it's my bedtime reading, evasion and households deciding they don't need a licence cost the BBC more than £1 billion a year in lost revenue. See, my son's up in Glasgow University, and he said to me...
So's my daughter, by
and
the way.
so's your daughter. I wasn't going to mention it because it wasn't for me to mention that Holly was at university in Glasgow. But they are both at university together. And the thing is that Jack said to me, why should I pay a lot? Because he just moved into his own flat with his mates. They're in their third year. I said, are you watching television? He said, yeah. He said, well, you got to pay for a license. But I don't watch the BBC. I watch Netflix. I watch streaming stuff. I don't watch the BBC.
Does he not watch hat-trick programmes on the BBC? Have I got news for you? Has he got no loyalty to his dad?
No.
Does he not acknowledge that it's the making of those programmes over the years that has paid for his...
He thinks I'm a plumber. I've kept it quiet. You know why I've kept it quiet? I don't want them sending me scripts. But no, and I explained to Jack, the fact is, if you own a television and you have a television in your house, you have to pay a TV license.
But that seems
not many people know that.
But that seems a quaint thing to say to people of Jack's age.
I know, but I suppose when I was reading this document, I thought, isn't it simpler just to make it the law that everybody who has a TV set has to pay a TV license?
But this is why this is a very difficult issue, because, of course, what do you call a TV set? Do you call a laptop a TV set, etc.? It's I like all things to do with the BBC and funding, there's no easy way through this. What people like us in television traditionally say, and there's some force in this, is to say the BBC licence fee costs £180 a year.
I thought it was 170.
Well, I think it's 180, but it's around that area. So what people who work in television will traditionally say is it's incredibly good value.
It is.
Break that down. It's less than 50p a day or whatever. Yeah. But I would.
It's less than a bag of heroin.
I don't want to speak on behalf of Jack or indeed on behalf of Holly, but I would say if you're that generation, you think, but that's not what I'm comparing to. I'm comparing to the subscriptions I choose to pay.
They don't pay them; we pay them, and they ponce off us. They're not paying for anything, Peter. These
maybe
kids.
Not the Mulville household, but I run a pretty tight ship in the Fincham household. But if you compare it to some of the subscriptions you pay, it actually looks like quite a lot of money. So I think it's harder and harder to keep people focused on the idea that it's a sort of social obligation to pay a licence fee if it's not backed up with rather crude threats of illegality or the knock on the door, which nobody really wants to, nobody's very comfortable with that. That £1 billion a year that the BBC is missing out on, they could, for instance, commission all the proposals I've currently got in with BBC Television.
I think it's
and actually pocket some change as well.
I think it's discriminating against you. But so,
well, it's probably discriminating against you as well, Jim.
So what are you going to do then? So
no, I haven't got that. We're not here to have answers. At least I'm afraid to say, disappointment to our listeners, I haven't got an answer. I'm pointing out, as we often do, that these thorny issues are genuinely thorny for the BBC. Tim Davie, he is now kind of, he's on his lap of honour, isn't he? He won't be there for very long now.
Yeah, he's about to stop paying his licence fee, I would have thought. But
whoever's coming in is, has got an in tray full of really thorny problems.
Did you realise that? You see, are there people out there who don't realise that if you're watching, say, the Champions League on Amazon Prime, then you actually need a TV licence.
Why?
Because you are watching television in this country.
Why don't they explain that more clearly?
Well,
if I don't know that, why?
But that is, I didn't know it until I just read it out loud to you. But but that's the law, and you're right. There's a reticence to apply the law, isn't it? Because it does feel a bit ugly, people going around in a van and banging on your doors. Although I did threaten Jack, I said, there'll be a knock on your door one day and this bloke will turn up and he'll look at a big bloke saying, you've got a telly, or in a Scottish accent, which I won't do because I don't want to piss off Scotsmen.
That'll be the bailiff saying, your dad hasn't paid the rent, Jack. Yeah. And he'll say, go and knock on my dad's door.
But I think that's You see, I think that, for example, the government, many years ago, the government shifted the responsibility for paying for the BBC World Service back onto the BBC. That's £400 million a year. That actually the government should take that back because that's part of our soft power as a country. It's a very trusted service. People in Iran now are listening to BBC Persia because they want to get the news. So
which government did that?
It was George Osborne.
That was in the days of austerity. Yeah, I've seen George Osborne recently walking around on
big issue.
He does
no
at all. Big paycheck. I don't think he's experiencing any austerity in his own life. I'm not commenting on his appearance. Actually, he lost a lot of weight, George Osborne.
What?
He was a bit of a fatty, wasn't he, George?
He
became the opposite.
He is I would imagine.
I knew.
He's no stranger to Ozempic.
An old colleague of mine went out with George Osborne when they were at Oxford together, and she called him Fat George.
And we can say that about George Osborne because he is probably one of the most unpopular people.
I think he's one of the fattest people we know. No, but he isn't anymore.
I once attended the Paralympics and. As a spectator.
No alarm bells ringing as Jimmy enters into this anecdote. No, nothing to worry about, guys.
It was one of the most wonderfully warm summer's evening. I was there with the family. It was a great evening. Everybody was in such a great mood. And then they announced that the gold medal was about to be given by the Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne. And everybody booed very, 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 very loudly. It was the only sour note in the whole evening. So
poor George.
Yeah, he lost a bit of weight that night. Have you seen some of the ideas they come up with?
Yeah, no, this is the other thing about this Green Paper is that they're
on the front foot a bit.
Yeah, which I think is a good thing, because if the only ideas floating around are completely kind of put advertising in Radio 1 or whatever, that's not going to
Or they've dismissed the idea of a subscription model. Thank God for that.
So specific ideas in the response: expanding the scope of the license fee to anyone streaming content on Netflix, Amazon, Disney, Apple, and YouTube,
what does that mean?
etc., whether the programming is live or on demand. What are you basically saying? You pay a subscription to Netflix, you watch Netflix, but therefore you have to pay your BBC license fee. That's not going to fly. Another idea: allowing ITV, Channel 4 and other PSBs onto the iPlayer, hosting the shows and allowing them to use subscriptions and advertising. Well, I can see the point of bringing all these streaming services of the linear broadcasters together onto one service.
I think that's going to happen anyway in the future, maybe long after we're dead. But I think there will be one big UK platform to compete with, Apple's and Netflix's.
But if you've got, let's say, ITV on that platform and they've got the right to put advertising into their programs, and therefore they will receive that advertising. You could say, how does that help the BBC's financial problems? Because ITV aren't going to want to go onto the iPlayer unless they're allowed to include advertising in their programming. And then that advertising is what keeps ITV alive.
And I kind of think that both these first two that you've mentioned are a bit woolly and vague and hard to enforce.
Yeah, you could cause that to happen.
But trying to get all those players to agree on anything, is going to be a nightmare. But then again, they've come up with the old saw as well. We'll cut some money out. Well, they're going to cut another 500 million out over the next 2 years.
We talked about that a couple of weeks ago.
Well, I guess they can do
cuts on top of cuts. It's very painful. And literally this morning I had a meeting with somebody at the BBC who mentioned budget cuts. It becomes the thing they mention in every meeting. So that's unsurprising, but that itself does not solve their problems. So I suppose we come back to, there's been more response to the Green Paper is out there, more words have been spoken, another kind of forest has been cut down to produce this report, but these ideas still feel like the same ideas.
The one good thing they've asked for is an end to the 10-year charter renewal process, which it says creates an existential threat at regular intervals.
Yeah, isn't that the idea? Isn't that exactly why the government wants it?
It's a way of the government keeping it to heel. But as a viewer and as a lover of the BBC, I would love to see it unfettered from that, because I think that what's in danger is you get a government that wants to destroy it and doesn't hold back.
But if you're the BBC and you put these things into response to the Green Paper, you're going to have layers of people at the BBC saying that's believable, that's credible, that's worth trying. It's a bit of a long shot, but let's put it in.
Yeah.
The idea of saying the charter never gets renewed feels to me like, wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't that be lovely for the BBC? But why would a government agree to that? Then the government, in a sense, has given up its power, its ability, as you say, to bring the BBC to heel. Whether you're a government sympathetic to the BBC, like the Labour government, more sympathetic, or kind of hostile, as Boris Johnson, the Tory government was, you're still going to want to feel you've got some power over the BBC, aren't you?
Why?
For the exact reason that they will then, acknowledge the political reality of the world that they move in.
Well, surely Boris Johnson would have completely emasculated it or robbed it of all of its
we can come at it another way.
And Farage, God knows what he might do to it.
What other publicly funded organisations aren't answerable to government? The NHS is answerable to government. The army, the civil service, they're all answered. I can't see a world in which a government says, okay, the BBC, you have your charter forever. And you don't have to
What about setting up an independent organisation?
Well, that's a slightly different thing, isn't it?
The Board of Trustees, for example, could be that. They could be vetted properly, and you don't have these people on board who are driven by, political motives, like this guy Robbie Gibbs, who's never been the same since he left the Bee Gees. Well, listen, what you and I have proved is that the BBC and its license fee argument and its future are pretty intractable. It's not an easy solve.
And sitting here now, have you read the response to the Green Paper slavishly from beginning to end?
Yeah.
I don't yet see anything in it that tells me how the BBC kind of navigates its way into a new non-licence fee world.
No, I think you've got to keep the licence fee, and you have to enforce it by people going around with tasers. And
I think they start, frankly, with your son Jack.
He
can afford a license.
You can get his address on our emails or socials, or why not? But he's going to be thrilled by this, I can tell you. I'm going to get the no speakies.
He's going to be bragging about this to his friends, saying, "I was mentioning Dad's podcast this week." They talked about me of some length.
Let's move from the BBC. Let's move from the sublime to, some would say, the ridiculous.
Yes.
Because, go on, Peter.
Oh, we're going to talk about Meghan Markle.
Oh, I love Meghan Markle.
We love talking about Meghan
never
Markle.
Stops giving.
And also, we've been talking about this is television stuff, because we're talking about Netflix here.
Yeah.
And the Duchess of Sussex, is she still the Duchess?
Is she still called that?
I can't keep up with all the titles that they
most
have. Most
royals now have had their titles removed from them.
Exactly. But let's assume she's still called the Duchess of Sussex.
Yeah.
Her lifestyle brand, As Ever, ironically titled As Ever, has ended.
It's called As Ever?
Yes, it is. As Ever. Oh, isn't it called With Love or something?
No, that's her TV show's called With Love.
So her lifestyle brand is called As Ever, rather than Here Today, Gone Tomorrow. And it is, for now, it might have been called, and it has ended its partnership with Netflix.
Right.
And essentially, to sum it up,
it's ended the
exactly. She's decided, or her advisors have decided, that Netflix is holding them back and doesn't have quite enough ambition. They want to sell, jam and flour sprinkles and shortbread cookies all around the world.
What's the thing she sells most of?
The world's leading global streaming service apparently doesn't have enough ambition for them. So they've, if you believe this, they've ended that partnership, and they're going to go and sell these things around the world all on their own. There is, of course, another point of view that says that Netflix are pleased to be shot of them and that nobody was watching their programs.
I think what's happened was that actually when they do their kind of algorithmic metrics, they do a thing where they can track how many people watched for the first 2 minutes, and then they can track how many people have watched to 90% of the series. And I would imagine they struggled to find even people who watched it for 2 minutes.
By the way, do you know what flour sprinkles are?
Yeah, what are flour sprinkles, by the way? You mentioned flour sprinkles.
They are, and I'm quoting here, edible confetti to beautify any dish that epitomise the idea of surprise and delight.
They are edible confetti.
It's like putting pepper on your pudding, You definitely get
that
surprised by
code. I put pepper on my pudding last night. So what the fuck is she talking about?
I can't sit here and translate this into real
apparently
English.
she shifts, of all these products, apparently she's best known for her jam.
Yep.
I've always thought she was jammy.
So they've decided to move on. A spokesman for As Ever said it was grateful for the partnership with Netflix during the brand's first year, and added, "We've experienced meaningful and rapid growth, and As Ever is now ready to stand on its own," which is sort of like, is it not the football manager saying, I think the team is doing absolutely fine. The fact that we're in the relegation zone means there's so many places above us we can aim for, so I've decided to leave.
And yet Netflix has said, Meghan's passion for elevating everyday moments into beautiful yet simple ways inspired the creation of the As Ever brand, and we are glad to have played a role in that. Now, if you have subtitles underneath that saying what they really meant was, thank fuck she's gone. We'll never have to listen to that drivel anymore and not lose viewers by the thousands.
But what is kind of, in television terms, what is going on here? Because we know that Netflix is an algorithm-driven organisation and quite an unsentimental organisation. So if they felt, the statistics, the numbers just aren't adding up, they will have dropped this. It's entirely believable that this can be presented as Meghan deciding to move on and go global because she's out there. But do you think, and you know Netflix better, you've just made a very successful series for Netflix with Lisa McGee, How to Get to Heaven from Belfast. Do you read this when you sort of penetrate the word salad of these announcements? Do you actually interpret this as Netflix have thought, even though Meghan Markle, we can sit here and say what we like about her jam or her flour sprinkles, she's one of the most famous women in the world, that's still not good enough for Netflix?
Netflix are really sophisticated. They can tell whether something's worth keeping or not. And that's why a lot of shows you don't see go beyond the second season on Netflix now. The kind of long-running series of 5, 6, 7 seasons now is quite a rare thing.
But you've made a different point there, which I think is a really interesting point about the fact that on Netflix you don't see many long-running series because the algorithm's a rather brutal thing.
Yeah.
Whereas we talked about this before, a show like Slow Horses on Apple, which is a much smaller streaming service. The percentage of the audience gets much smaller. But nevertheless, they've taken a show like Slow Horses and said, we're going to stick with that one. We're going to keep commissioning it on to 5, 6 series. That is far more like the way that traditional broadcasters treated success. So, whatever your reference point might be, Friends or whatever, 150 episodes, a network gets a show like Friends, it's like, oh my God, we've struck gold here. We will have many, many series of it. Is the long-running series in danger of being a thing of the past? Because we're now in an algorithm-driven world where even though the first series might do well, the second series might do well. At that point, computer says no, and it's over.
You could be. I mean, the thing is that the serialized miniseries, the 8 episodes, and that's the end of it, is also becoming more and more popular on the streaming services because you can get big stars. Kate Winslet turns up in a TV show. She's not going to do it for 8 years. She might do one series, which if it's very well written and it's properly funded and she's paid enough money, she'll do it. So, you're trying to get attention of the audience to come and stick with your network. So I think that shorter runs are going to be more apparent. I think they want bigger stars in these short runs. So I think the long
challenging for us as producers, because in the old world of linear television, at any one time, there would be in a schedule the shiny new things, the things that are at their peak, that they're 3 or 4 series in and the audience has grown and they're, the traitors of the moment or whatever. But then, because if you were running a linear channel, you had to fill up a schedule. If you were really honest with yourself, there were shows that maybe were past their best, that were living out their life because it's easier to go on recommissioning them than to replace them. Because if you do decommission them, if you cancel them, you've got a great big hole in your schedule at 8 o'clock on Tuesday or whatever. But streamers don't have schedules like that. Yeah. So they can just quietly put things kind of out of their misery, as it were. Therefore, does it make it harder to slowly develop the attention and loyalty of an audience in the way that, we've grown up on that, if you like? That could be a drama, it could be a sitcom, it could be a panel show or whatever. It doesn't necessarily sort of pop in the first series or even the second series, but 5 years down the line, it's got a very loyal audience who will stay with it for a long time.
But also, I'm beginning to discern a difference now between Netflix's output and, say, Apple's output. And Netflix do want to have things that the audience kind of gobble up. I mean, they will have room on their platform for what I would call the kind of airport thriller. So Night Agent, for example, I really enjoyed it and gobbled it up in about 3 or 4 nights. I can't remember what it was now, but it was really great at the time. But Apple, on the other hand, I think curate incredibly high-end shows. I mean, like I said, I think I may have said it before on this podcast, when I met Jamie Ehrlich and Zach Van Amberg, who run Apple in Los Angeles, and I asked them, saying, well, what's your favorite show on Apple? He said, well, you wouldn't have seen it. It's called Drops of God, and it was an acquisition by Jay Hunt, and then they've they funded the succeeding series. I'm halfway through the second series, and it's a brilliant show. But I have to say, it doesn't try and get to the widest possible audience, but it's a wonderful piece of television if you like that kind of thing. Same with Severance, I would say. As you say, Slow Horses, I think is slightly more populist. But nevertheless, they managed to get Gary Oldman, which turns it into a kind of special event. But the thing about Apple is...
Apple would trade all that for Netflix's viewing numbers.
I don't think they would, because I don't think Apple see their TV output in the... Netflix is just Netflix. Apple is the...
Is a small arm of a massive...
It's basically a $3 trillion whatever dollar company. It's the biggest company in the world, and its TV output is merely part of its marketing spend to enhance the experience on the iPhone or the iPad. Yeah. So it doesn't actually need to succeed as a TV network, whereas Netflix does.
To go back to where we started, which is Meghan Markle and her series with Love Meghan, does the demise of that series tell us anything about the changing world of Netflix or the changing kind of patterns of viewing and all that stuff? Or does it just tell us something about that particular thing, her and a bubble bursting there, and Netflix possibly feeling our job is to commission programs that our audiences enjoy? It isn't really to help somebody sell jam in Indonesia.
No, although they do need jam in Indonesia, Peter. It's a big problem out there. But the thing is that I think that it's just a case of, look, they just thought we got a bang for our buck out of Meghan and Harry with the, as you say, with the massive announcement. But I think they're going to reinvent their version of Love Island and have Prince Andrew host it next year.
Well, we all look forward to that.
Yep.
All right. Well,
he likes islands.
He does. He's got lawyers as well.
He's not.
Actually, I'm not sure he has any lawyers.
Can I tell you?
I think there's almost nothing you.
There's nothing we can say that will diminish his reputation in the eyes of right-minded people, which is the definition of libel. I think we're safe on Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
Okay, well, if he listens to our podcast,
God bless him,
and he's got to the end of it this week,
yeah,
he can consider whether we've libelled him or not.
He's just finishing his Sun crossword.
Well, that's all for this week. Thanks very much for listening. Any questions about the world of television you want to ask, send them our way. We'd love to hear from you.
You can send us an email. You can get in touch via our socials. All the info is, as usual, in the description.
Or even better yet, why not subscribe to our YouTube channel?
Thanks for listening. And if you enjoyed the show, please do follow Insiders, the TV podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening.